Oh, what's up, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well. Sorry I zoomed in on the video, but today I'm gonna be talking about Old Valyria, or tonight, whenever you're watching this. Um, but Old Valyria is one of the most important places in the entire world of Ice and Fire. Even though by the time the main story starts, it is already destroyed, and that is what makes it so interesting to me. This is just not some random city ruined in Essos. Valyria is the reason we have dragons, Valyrian steel, the Targaryens, Dragonstone, and eventually Aegon's conquest. Almost everything connected to Aegon Targaryen goes back to one civilization. Excuse me. But the crazy thing is, Valyria was once the greatest empire in the entire world of Ice and Fire. It had dragons, magic, wealth, roads, armies, blood mages, slaves, terribly, um, and some of the most powerful families to ever exist. And overnight it was gone. So in this video, I'm just going to go through the history of Old Valyria, how it rose from a small people into the most feared empire in the world, and how it shaped Westeros even after it fell, and why the Doom of Valyria is still one of the scariest mysteries in Game of Thrones history. So the first thing to understand is why Valyria matters so much. When people talk about the Targaryens, they usually focus on Westeros. They talk about Aegon the Conqueror, the Iron Throne, the Dance of the Dragons, or Daenerys. But before any of that, the story starts in Valyria. The Targaryens were not originally from Westeros. They were one of the Dragon Lord families of the Valyrian Freehold, and the Valyrians and Celtigars also came from Valyria, which is why these families are seen as having old Valyrian dragon blood. Even though things like High Valyrian and Valyrian steel come from this lost empire, this is why Valyria feels bigger than just one location. It is the foundation behind so much of the lore, and yeah, I mean, it's like the backbone of it all. The empire is dead, but its influence never really disappears. The Targaryens survive because they escaped Valyria. Aegon conquers because his family has dragons. Um, Valyrian steel swords become priceless because the knowledge to make them is lost. Like literally, nobody can make them. There's nothing that anybody can do. Even the fear of dragons in Westeros becomes a memory of what Valyria was once upon a time. So Old Valyria was located in Essos on the Valyrian Peninsula, southeast of the Free Cities and near the Summer Sea. That location was important because Valyria had access to major trade routes, the sea, and eventually a path to expand across Essos. Before the Doom, this was not just some cursed wasteland, this was the center of the Valyrian Freehold. It was the heart of a massive empire, but after the Doom, the geography of the whole area changed. The peninsula was shattered, the land broke apart, and the smoking sea was created around the ruins. That is one of the reasons Valyria feels so terrifying. It was not just politically destroyed, but the land itself was destroyed. It went from being one of the most advanced and powerful places in the world to a cursed ruin the sailors were afraid to even go near, which is pretty crazy. The origin of Valyria is one of the best parts of the lore, I think, and I think it's a shared opinion. The Valyrians did not start as the most powerful people in the world. They were originally a smaller people, sometimes described as shepherds, living near the 14 Flames. The 14 Flames were a chain of volcanoes in Valyria, and this is why the Valyrians discovered dragons. That discovery changed legit everything, because dragons, kind of ruled the world for a long time in A Song of Ice and Fire. Once the Valyrians learned how to bond with the dragons and control them, they became something the world had never really seen before. Dragons were not just animals, but they were weapons. They were political power, and they were the reason why Valyria could dominate over other civilizations. And this is where Valyria starts to become super scary, right? Because the Valyrians did not just find dragons and ride them, their power was also connected to blood magic, sorcery, and secrets that nobody fully understands. So Valyria's rise was not just about military strength, it was about magic, bloodlines, and dragons all being tied together. This is what turned them from shepherds and a small people into dragon lords. So the Dragon Lord system, Valyria was not ruled like a normal kingdom with one king sitting on the throne. Instead, the freehold was controlled by powerful Dragon Lord families, and these families competed with each other for influence, status, and also power. That is one of the most interesting details to me because Valyria was not just one united family, it was more like a whole class of Dragon Lords. And, constantly trying to stay on top of each other, kind of like, U.S. politics today. Power came from bloodline, dragons, wealth, and political skill. The Targaryens were part of this world, but they were not one of the strongest Dragon Lord families. That is really important because when we watch Game of Thrones, or when we're watching House of Dragon or Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the Targaryens feel like the only, not the only, but the most important family in the world. But in Old Valyria, they were not at the very top, and that's what makes their survival even crazier. Because in the beginning of Fire and Blood, just going off the top, in literally the first chapter, it talks about, or the first passage of the book, they find out, they get a warning 12 years before the doom of Valyria, and they get the fuck out of there, which is good for them. But yeah, just adding that in. But I'm sure anybody watching this probably already knows that. Yeah, the most powerful families in Valyria died in the Doom. The family, that was not a great house became, you could argue the greatest house in Westeros. But what Valyria gave the world, Valyria's biggest symbol will always be the dragons, but dragons were not the only thing they gave the world. Valyrian steel is one of the most famous examples. These swords are rare. It's like Dark Sister, Blackfire, swords like those that have such importance, and like there's literally like the narrator will say it, like the Archmaester, he'll be like, well, this will like when they give when Maegor the Cruel has both um Dark Sister and Blackfire, it's like this will not turn out well, and it did not turn out well for anybody. um yeah, after the Doom, the secret of making these swords were basically lost, which is why blades become so valuable in Westeros. Valyrian steel. Sorry, blades. Oops. But families like the Starks, Lannisters, Mormonts, Tarleys, and others treat Valyrian steel swords almost like sacred family treasures. High Valyrian also survives as a language of power and prestige. It is not just a normal language; it represents old blood, nobility, and a connection to the lost empire. Valyria also had roads, architecture, sorcery, and technology that made it seem more advanced than the rest of the world. But what makes Valyria so interesting is that of all of this greatness comes with the dark side. Their power was impressive, but it was also super dangerous. It was built with dragons, slaves, mines, and blood magic. Bad, 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 bad. Terrible. 4 bads in a row. So when I look at Valyria, I see a civilization that was super advanced and ahead of its time, but also, like terrible. Like literally were built on like it reminds me of like if Rome had like a little Pompeii under it. But once the Valerians had dragons, they did what most powerful empires do. They expanded. They fought against the old geese, one of the ancient powers of Essos. The wars between Valyria and Geese were massive, but in the end, dragons gave Valyria the advantage. Old Geese was crushed, and Valyria became the dominant power in Essos. And from there, the freehold expanded even more. Their influence reached across much of the continent. The free cities also were tied to Valyria's history because many of them began as Valyrian colonies or outposts. And this is where Valyria stops being just a city and becomes an empire. And honestly, this is also where Valyria becomes terrifying. Because if you were another kingdom or civilization in Essos, how were you supposed to fight anybody who had dragons? So a normal army could be burnt, a city wall melted like literally nothing. A rival king could be destroyed in a snap of a finger from a dragon, and Valyria's empire was built on the fact that almost nobody could stand against this dragon fire. So the city itself, not a very good picture, I'm sorry. But the city of Valyria is one of the places where the mystery is what makes it really interesting. We hear about dragon roads, sphinxes, massive buildings, mines, ports, and areas connected to the volcanoes. The way I picture Valyria was just not a powerful city. It was a city designed to make people feel small, kind of like Rome. Everything about it showed off power: the towers, the dragons flying overhead, the roads, the temples, the ports, and the families that ruled from above. In House of Dragon, King Viserys has a model of Old Valyria, and that is one of my favorite details because it shows how much the Targaryens still look back in this place. Um, let me actually go back. Yeah, I want to touch on it a little bit more. Even generations later, Valyria was still part of their identity, and they were still ruling Westeros, but mentally they were connected to their long lost empire of where they used to live and their ancestors were. But Viserys in the memory of Valyria, Viserys studying his model of Old Valyria says a lot about the Targaryens. To me, it shows that the Targaryens inherited the pride of Valyria, but they did not fully inherit Valyria itself. They have the dragons, they have the blood, they have the language, and they have the customs, but the actual world that created them is gone. That is what makes the Targaryens feel different from other houses. The Starks still have Winterfell, the Lannisters have Castle Rock, and the Arryns still have the Eyrie, but the Targaryens' true homeland, they'll never be there. So in a way, they're powerful, but they're also survivors of their own apocalypse. And the Targaryens are always going to try to hold on to what they feel is theirs because they don't have anything truly. The dark side of Valyria. I do not think Valyria should be remembered as anything cool in the history of Game of Thrones. I mean, it is cool, but anything beautiful or dope. But yeah, the deeper you get into it, the worse it gets. Valyria is built on slavery. Slaves worked in dangerous mines beneath the 14 flames. These mines were connected to the wealth and power of the freehold, but they were also brutal. Valyria was also tied to blood magic and sorcery. The Dragon Lords had secrets that most of the world did not understand. Some of those secrets are probably insane. I bet you could look up some. There are stories of strange creatures, experiments, and unnatural things coming out of Valyria. So, yes, Valyria gave the world dragon steel, language, and empire, but also represents arrogance to the gods and to everyone around, cruelty, and the danger of people thinking that they're just above everybody else. But in a way, it kind of feels like Doom is a poetic justice for, they ran too high and they flew too close to the sun. Um, but the survival of House Targaryen comes down to Daenerys the Dreamer. According to the story, Daenerys had a vision of Valyria's destruction. Her father, Aenar Targaryen, believed her and the family needed to move away from Valyria to Dragonstone, and that was 12 years before she had that vision. 12 years before it happened. But you know, and at this time, probably looked like a huge step down, because Dragonstone was so minuscule compared to Valyria. But other Dragon Lord families may have thought Targaryens were weak because of this, scared or losing status. But ultimately, that decision actually saved that whole fam, saved everybody. But when the doom came, the other Dragon Lord families were destroyed. Targaryens survived because they had left, 12 years earlier. But yeah, a family that was not even one of the strongest houses of Valyria becomes the last major Dragon Lord family because they listened to a dream, which is pretty crazy. So dreams definitely, like Dany's, like definitely, it definitely means something. And they had Aegon, which is pretty cool. But yeah, the Doom of Valyria. The Doom of Valyria is the main event of the whole story. The 14 flames erupted, the land shattered, dragons died, dragon lords died, and the greatest empire in the world disappeared almost overnight. That is what makes the Doom feel different than a normal fall off of an empire. Valyria did not slowly decline over hundreds of years. It was basically Control Alt deleted. Boom. And the scariest part is nobody knows what exactly caused it. Was it a natural volcanic disaster? Was it magic gone wrong? Was it sabotaged by enemies? Personally, I think it was just, years and years and years of dark magic and volcanic fire just like mixing together. And just one day it just imploded on itself. Um, oops. But yeah. After the doom, the ruins of Valyria became one of the most feared places in the world. The smoking sea surrounded the broken peninsula, and sailors avoided the area because it was seen as cursed. So if you like, it's like Sotoros or like west of Westeros, like anybody that's gone there is basically controlled, deleted, cooked. Um, but people believe that if you sail too close, you're doomed. The air, the water, the ruins, and whatever still lives there are all treated like a death sentence. And going back in Game of Thrones, when Tyrion and Jorah pass through the ruins, we get a small look of what Valyria became. Um, and they get cooked up. So that's not good. One dude gets a disease, and they both almost drown. Um, but yeah, why nobody why nobody goes back is because it's insane. You probably die immediately. But the reason people still think about Valyria is because of the ruins that probably still hold like insane treasure. There could be Valyrian steel swords, dragon knowledge, lost books, magical artifacts, and wealth from the greatest empire in history. But almost everyone who tries to go there either dies, disappears, or comes back completely changed. Um, yeah, I mean, like an example is Arya Targaryen's story is probably the most disturbing example. She disappears with Balerion the Black Dread and returns like insane. Even Balerion comes back wounded, and that's like terrifying because Balerion was the greatest dragon the Targaryens ever had. And I'm pretty sure after that it's like banned in the like Seven Kingdoms that you can't fly over there. But yeah, I mean, um, so Valyria, still tempts people, but it also will destroy you, and it destroys anybody that comes to the ruins. But you can come looking for the glory of the old world, but you're not gonna live through it. The conclusion, if you're still here watching, thank you so much. My final take is that Old Valyria is the most important ruined civilization in the world of ice and fire. It dies before the main story starts, but everything it creates keeps shaping history. The Targaryens survive because they leave. Aegon conquers Westeros because his family still has dragons. Valyrian steel becomes priceless because the old knowledge is lost. High Valyrian remains connected to power and ancient blood, and the ruins of Valyria become a warning. To me, Valyria is not just about dragons or magic. It is about what happens when a civilization becomes so powerful that it thinks nothing can touch it. The Valyrians ruled with fire, blood, slavery, and sorcery, but they built the greatest empire in the world, and fire destroyed them. This is why Old Valyria is so important. It is the origin of the Targaryens, but is also a warning behind their entire story. Power can build an empire, but arrogance can turn it into ash. Thank you. And also, I was reading Fire and Blood today, or this morning before I went into work, and Jairus gets questioned, and they ask him, why do you train so much? Why do you do the things you do? Why do you go so hard on yourself? I can't, remember the entire thing, but he basically goes, um, I never want anybody to see me as weak, and everyone to respect me. And I'm just saying that because Jaehaerys is the GOAT, greatest Westeros king of history. But yeah, guys, if you enjoyed this video, leave a suggestion of whatever. I'll do a video. I really like Game of Thrones. I like Song of Ice and Fire. That universe, super connected. But I also like I'm really into Star Wars. I really like Invincible. I like Avatar. Um, both Avatars, the Blue Cats, and you know Avatar: Last Airbender. I like the X-Men, anything Marvel. So if you ever have any suggestions, let me know. If there's anything I can do to be better at something, let me know as well. But yeah, guys, have a great night, day, evening, afternoon. But yeah. Take care, and if you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe. Thank you.